Here we are preparing a no-till garden for planting this spring. Right now it's very early in the spring and the last of the snow has finally melted out the garden, and in fact you can still see some ice right there in the black plastic. Well, as you can see, our plants have been coming along pretty good. A lot of these I have already transplanted into the cow pots. Got a couple house plants in there that need a little doctoring. But these are what they call cow pots here, these rectangular pots, and what they're made out of is like cow manure, and you can put those in the ground and they're just biodegradable and they help enrich the soil. And what I've been doing is, as these get bigger, I've just been kind of picking away at these, you know, onesies, twosies here and there as I go, but they're getting to the point now where they really need to be transplanted. All the ones that haven't been really need to go into the cow pots. I like to use this Green Mountain compost potting soil. It's organic, and that's what I use to fill my cow pots with. I like to fill my cow pots up about halfway to start. Then I just lift one of these out of the propagation tray. Yeah, it looks like it needs to have a little bit more in there. I like to have the top about even with the top of the pot. Just tap it down a little bit. Now, I had mentioned in a previous video, if you had more than one plant germinate, that you could cut the weaker of the two. And as you can see here, I have two, and this one is quite a bit smaller than this other one. So I'm going to remove this weaker one. Now I'm just going to run through and transplant all these tomatoes, and I'll take them back up and put them underneath the grow lights. Hey folks, well, today's the day we finally get to put some of this garden in. I'm going to be planting the plants that I've been hardening off for the last few days. If some of you watching this are unfamiliar with the term hardening off, what that means is the plants that I started indoors, I take outside and I put them in partial shade for a few hours a day, and I slowly build that up so I can leave them out all day. Usually I'll go a couple hours, then the next day I'll do a couple hours plus an hour. Every day I add a little bit of time until it gets to the point where the plants are able to stay in direct sun. That way the plants get prepared and they get themselves ready for the harsher environment of outside, other than the environment of being inside under artificial lights. What we're doing here is we're just pulling back the mulch that I put down last fall. I call it a mulch, but it's really a combination of mulch, compost, chicken manure, and hay. I use a method called composting in place, where I don't really put down fully cured compost. It's more like a pile that's just kind of been sitting for the season. At the end of the season, I just dump it on the garden and we let it compost in place. So what we're going to do is pull that aside, and I'm going to dig a little trench and we're going to plant our broccoli right here. Here you can see I ran a string across the garden. This is where I'm going to put my tomatoes. And I got a string here because I want to run a cattle panel where the string is so I can trellis my tomatoes this year. Now, when I plant tomatoes, it's always good to plant them kind of deep. A tomato will sprout roots along its stem. So if I can get them in deep and it sprouts some roots up in here, that means I get a much better root system. Well, that's all the tomatoes that I have that are ready to go in. I've got others that are going to go over on the other side, be it probably double that amount. But that's all that's ready for now. So what we're going to do is mulch everything that we planted today. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you already know that I use what's called a no-till gardening method. And as you can tell by the looks of this garden here, I don't till it. All we do, either in the spring or in the fall, we'll put down this plastic. I usually do it early spring, right after the snow is melted. And we just leave everything right here. And also in the fall, I will put some what I call compost. This is my pile here. It's not really a compost pile. It's just a rotting pile that I just keep off the garden in the summer while it's collecting. It's mostly just cleanings from the chickens. And in the fall, I'll just spread that over the garden and we just leave it there. Now after I've planted, what we do is we take newspaper. I've got them started there. 5 layers of newspaper works very well as a weed barrier, and over the top of the newspaper we put down hay. Some people have expressed concerns that by putting the hay in the garden I'm just introducing weed seed, and if you know anything about farming, a good farmer cuts his hay before it goes to seed. So if I buy hay from a good farmer, that shouldn't be a problem. But if it is, that's where the black plastic comes into play. I put that down in the spring. What the plastic does is it heats up the soil, forces any seeds to germinate, and of course they come up and it's black plastic, there's no light, so they die. So I've been doing this system now for, I think this is probably the 5th year, and I would never go back. I recommend it wholeheartedly. I basically don't have to weed. I might have to weed once or maybe twice on my carrots or other things that I direct sow, but other than that, that's about it. Now I do have to warn you, this can be a real pain on a windy day, and today's windy, so it's going to be kind of a pain. You can put rocks over your paper to kind of hold them, but we like to take the rocks off. I don't leave them there. So if I use rocks, I'll pull them off after I get the hay down. Well, we got this all in. We got the broccolis in and half of the tomatoes, and we got it all mulched. It was a miserable job mulching it, simply because the wind made it difficult. So I'm gonna take the hose and just water this down, because I'm kind of concerned that it might all blow up.